And then I went in quickly and translated everything to Portuguese. She understands English, but still, it wasn't like coherent. I had half the thing in Portuguese and the other half in English, so it didn't make sense. Something happened at work just the other day, and I think it's important for me to share with you because it has to do with English, and it'll also give me the opportunity to talk about something else that I don't see a lot of people talking about it and explaining how it should be explained. And yeah, I want to have that conversation with you. But if you don't know me, first of all, my name is Jordana. I'm Brazilian, but I live in Portugal, and I have been living in Portugal for almost 3 years now. I have never set foot in the US, and I had never been to an English-speaking country until I was 23 years old. And by that time, I already knew how to speak English. I also work for a Swedish fintech company, and for me, that's so interesting because I only have one coworker that speaks Portuguese because she is Portuguese. But the rest of the team, they speak different languages, so the main language that we use to communicate, the only language that we use to communicate is English, because it's the universal language. Everybody knows it, at least like everybody that is in the company knows how to speak it, how to communicate through it. So that's the language that we use. And before I tell you the story of what was it that happened, I want to talk about the one thing that I mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, that is the one thing that I don't see a lot of people talking about it. And for me, that is so important, which is when you want to learn a second language, a language that is not your native language, you have to look at it as if you were building a habit, Let's say that you haven't been exercising for many years, and then you decided that you want to start running. You're gonna wake up tomorrow morning, put on your running shoes, and you're gonna step out the door and you're gonna start running. It won't take long for you to realize that it's not going to be an easy task, that it's not going to be something that, okay, I decided that I want to start running, but I can't not ignore the fact that I've never ran, that's not a habit for me. And I haven't done any sort of like exercise to prepare myself for this right now, So you have to build. That's something you have to build. And so you're going to run a little bit, and then you're going to walk a little bit to catch your breath. And then you're going to run a little bit more, and then you're going to walk a little bit more, And with time, if you do it like once, that's not going to become a habit, right? But if you do it a little bit every day, or if you have consistency, if you're able to do it a few times a week and then you start doing a little bit every day, you're going to see that in a few days, in a few weeks, you're going to be much better than that first day that you could barely run like 3 minutes straight. And that's the same approach, that's the same way we have to look when we want to speak English, when we want to speak another language that's not our native language, We have to look at it as if we were building a habit. And for that to happen, first of all, you have to commit. Like nothing happens if you don't actually look at it and say, I'm committing, I want this to happen. And then if you don't apply it a little bit every day or with consistency, if you're not doing that with continuity, like you're doing it and you can see that will become more natural because you're doing it frequently, not because you do it once in a lifetime, So that's the power of a habit, And I realized that that just sounded like like that book, The Power of, I think The Power of Habit, The Power of a Habit, The Power of the Habit. I'm not sure. There's a book with that title, and I have actually read it. I went through a phase where I was reading a lot of those books, when I was reading a lot of those type of books. It was a great phase. Right now I'm in another phase, but I know a lot of people have a lot of like prejudice against those types of books. And I heard that Atomic Habits is also an amazing book if you're interested. So The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits, those, I haven't read Atomic Habits yet, but I have read The Power of Habit, and it's actually a great book, to be fair. But anyway, if you want to start like doing some reading in English, I definitely recommend The Power of Habit. There are a lot of researches that say that it usually takes around 66 days for you to build a habit. So if you're waiting for some sort of like instant gratification, that's not what a habit is, you know? A habit is hard at first, but if you persist it's going to become easier, you know? And that's something that I had already noticed when I started learning English, that I had to do a little bit every day, and then with time I was going to see the results. And I did see the results. I see the results every single day, you know? It was the result of me committing and learning English that got me this job, for example, the job that I'm in today, that gets me the opportunity of communicating with people from different countries, communicating with my boss, you know? So I see the results. But I also, even now, see something else happening, which is my brain, when you add English, now let's just talk about English, like a second language. When that becomes a habit, that switch in your head that you had to constantly think about it before you speak becomes automatic. So let's say that every time you have to speak English, you have to think about it. So, okay, right now I'm speaking English. So let's try to focus. What is this word? Pause. So what is this word in English? What is it that I have to say now? So when English is not yet a habit for you, you have to constantly switch that key on, you know, like that you have to think it through. You have to think about the things you say all the time right before you say it. But when that becomes a habit, that switch becomes automatic as well. So when you switch to English, so okay, now I'm going to speak English, you don't have to constantly translate everything that you're thinking about, you know? And that's the situation that I saw happening just the other day ago. So what happened was, I was using Slack to communicate with my coworker, the one that speaks Portuguese. And Slack, if you guys don't know it, it's an app that companies usually use for those that work remotely, so you can communicate with people within the company and the team. You know, it's sort of like a WhatsApp for the company, sort of like that. So I was writing this message to my coworker, the one that speaks Portuguese, and I was writing it in Portuguese. But then in the middle of the sentence that I was writing, I had to write the word PowerPoint, because I had to do like a PowerPoint presentation and we were talking about it. And then I finished writing what I had to say to her, and then I sent it without double checking. But then after I sent it, I stopped and read what I wrote, and it turns out that because I wrote one word in English, PowerPoint, my brain, that switch, automatically turned to English, and then I wrote the rest of the sentence in English. So I had the first half in Portuguese and the other half in English, and I didn't even notice until I had already sent it, and then I stopped and read it, you know. So, and then I went in quickly and translated everything to Portuguese. She understands English, but still, it wasn't like coherent. I had half the thing in Portuguese and the other half in English, so it didn't make sense. But I went in and translated to Portuguese. But anyway, what I want to make it clear here, the goal for this conversation is that I didn't have to think before I wrote like a whole thing. It wasn't like a small sentence, it was a very large explanation. And I wrote the whole thing in English without even realizing that I had switched from my native language to English. And that's because English has become something that is so natural to me that I don't have to keep constantly like analyzing everything that I say or translating everything that I want to say. Sometimes you do blank out on words, just like it's happening right now. There is a specific word, but anyway, I don't have to keep constantly overanalyzing everything that I say because I have so much contact. I'm practicing so often that that switch becomes natural, you know? And that doesn't mean that it's always 100% perfect. There's no perfect when it comes to speaking a second language. There isn't even perfect when it comes to speaking your own language. I bet that you make mistakes speaking your own language all the time. I do on mine. Like when I speak Portuguese, I have a microphone right here. That's why I said sorry, because I hit the microphone. But when I speak Portuguese, sometimes I blank out on words. I can't remember specific words. I can't remember sometimes if that conjugation, like the way to say that verb is correctly or not. So if that happens in your own native language, why are you expecting? Guys, I swear to God, like I am surrounded by dogs barking all the time. It's the neighbor's dog, it's the house dog, and honestly, do you hear that? Now it's both. I would really like to say that's lovely, but it annoys me. That was short-lived. I was just going to say, wow, silence. No. Okay, let's go back now. I'm not gonna celebrate ahead of time. This is on me. Everybody's home. And you know, like, dogs are loose and wild. And people make noise. And I can't really control that. This has just become sort of like a diary, a journaling video. But that's me, guys. Like, my mind is just like so random and all over the place all the time. This is what it's like having a conversation with me. So welcome into my brain. Okay, I think we're good. All right, nice. So if you make mistakes speaking your own native language, why are you expecting perfection speaking another language? You are going to blank out on words. You are going to blank out on expressions. And that's absolutely fine. There's no need for panic, you know. If you can explain around it, that's something that I work with my students when they can't remember specific words. Like, can you explain around it? What is it that you're trying to say? Try to remember other words to explain what you're trying to convey, you know. So I blanked out on a word. Let's go with over analyzing, you know, not the exact word I wanted, but you're not gonna be stuck there trying to remember. I did it right now because this is a video and I was trying to find that perfect word that I wanted. But if I'm in a real conversation, not that this isn't real, if I am at work, I'm not going to try to remember a word for like 5 minutes, you know? I'm going to try to explain around it. And that's absolutely fine. We're humans. We can't expect perfection on everything that we do, but we can have the realistic expectation that if we apply ourselves, if we commit ourselves, into doing a little bit every day, with time you will see the results. You know, it's not about I'm going to speak English flawlessly tomorrow or next month even, because the learning process and the learning curve is different for each person and for the amount of effort that that person puts in the activity, you know. And the more you study, the more you will evolve. The more you apply yourself, the more you will evolve. And if you study twice a week, you will see the results of you practicing twice a week. If you study every day, you will see the results of you practicing and studying every day. Do you know what I mean? I see that with the habit of speaking English, that communication comes more naturally and more easily than it would otherwise. That was the topic of our conversation. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I hope you were able to take something good out of what we just talked about, and that you will add that to your life, you know, and try to really build that habit. So you can count with me for whatever you need. So if you have a question, drop a comment down below. If you liked this conversation, don't forget to also give it a like right down here and to subscribe to the channel. And I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.